Thank you everyone who's already joined. I'm just gonna begin with some of the basics. We all understand webinars by this point, but it doesn't hurt to share. We are gonna be using the Q&A section of the website, of the Zoom webinar here for any submission of questions. Please submit your questions whenever you think of them. We're gonna do our best to answer them potentially throughout, especially if it seems like a good one for the moment. Otherwise, we'll definitely have Q&A time at the end. We've got some webinar today, so please I encourage you to challenge us with your questions and your comments. In the Q&A section, you can upvote. So if you see a question that you also have, give it an upvote so that it goes to the top of my list, and we'll make sure we prioritize those questions that have sort of the most interest. So as people are joining, remember that the Q&A section is really what I'm going to be looking at for questions. I'm really excited to get started. My name is Kim Johnson. I'm the Director of Marketing at Igor. We put together a great webinar today with some exciting players in the smart building space. So I'm going to begin with a quick introduction of our speakers today. We've got, we're going to begin with Andy Rittenhouse. He's currently a specifications manager with Somfy Systems. And Andy's focus is on commercial building solutions relating to window coverings and natural daylight management. He has a passion for healthy and sustainable building design, and he's achieved both LEED, GA, and WELL AP achievements. Andy started his career in solar shading in 1999 in Houston, Texas. He served on many industry committees and has been conducting seminars and trainings nationally for over 20 years. Say hi, Andy. Make sure y'all are off, ready to speak and off mute. Okay. Russell Horowitz is currently the National Specification Manager with Somfy Systems. He has been a part of the Somfy family for over 14 years with experience in technical support, inside sales, outside sales, and corporate training. His current concentration has been promoting on the benefits of automated shade systems and assisting with system design within the specification and design community.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you. And next is Alex. Alex Bunda is a graduate of the Savannah College Art and Design and has as an Atlanta native, now is proud to lead Southwire's Spark Innovation Center, positioned in the heart of downtown Atlanta's Tech Square. During his time with Southwire, Alex has served as a trusted strategic advisor to C-suite executives. He's been instrumental in end-to-end acquisition and integration communications, developed and communicated company-wide strategic plans. But today, Alex is responsible for Spark's business operations, where he explores transformational opportunities for Southwire. And that's really the case study that we'll be checking out today. So with that, thank you, Alex, for joining us.
Thanks, Kim. Excited to be here.
And then we have Matt Conger. He's responsible for Igor's multi-channel sales strategy for Southeastern US and LATAM, C-level sales with Fortune 500 enterprise clients, and developing Igor's ecosystem and partner relationships. He has more than 12 years of experience in intelligent buildings and has held a variety of roles in the industry, including product marketing, industrial systems engineering, and
awesome. Yeah. Hey, thanks, Kim. Appreciate you having me. And then also, thanks for making this happen. As always, these are great sessions that you put on.
Thank you. So let's just get started with maybe the kind of foundational question here. There's so many different technology companies out there. Why did Igor and Somfy decide to pursue innovation, and why does this matter?
Well, I think a lot of what would explain this better would be to kind of understand who Somfy is and why Somfy and Igor decided to partner together. So Somfy is the world-leading manufacturer for motors and controls for window treatments. Our core business revolves around motorization, but there's an increased demand in the market for control solutions. And Somfy has many different proprietary control solutions that we offer internally, but there's a market requirement for integrated control now. It's not just proprietary standalone subsystems. people want everything working together. So we went out and we spoke to many different control companies, and we decided to partner with Igor. And the question was, why Igor? Well, first, they were very easy to integrate with. It was a quick validation process. Our engineers worked together relatively quickly to come up with an integrated solution that meets the market requirements. And next, Somfy's big on promoting new technologies. We want to make sure that we're not falling behind, that we're working with new technologies, and we're evolving every day. And PoE is one of those technologies that's out in the market right now. There's a new demand for it from the clients, and we want to make sure that we're partnered with one of the PoE leaders in the market, like Igor.
Yeah, and then I'll add a little bit to that. So when we kind of came together, we noticed like a lot of synergies, and some of the things that we recognized, or Igor recognized with Somfy, is that one, they're a global leader. Two, the product depth is by far the best that's out on the market today. They're a very innovative group, so they're leading, whether it be in education or in product. And then lastly, just their customer service is and sales team is by far the best in the industry, right? So not only are they there producing great products, but they're able to support those great products, and it makes a great complementary ecosystem partner for Igor.
Thank you. Something that's pretty interesting is that this integration is really a PoE, Power over Ethernet technology integration. You know, that's kind of Igor's backbone. Anyone who's been to an Igor webinar knows we are all about the PoE world. Somfy is too. So I want to start with Igor and Somfy, and then I do want to hear Alex's input. This integration relies on PoE. So why is PoE the protocol of choice?
Well, one of the big pushes for Somfy recently with product development and partnerships has focused on reduced infrastructure. And the first one revolves around power. Obviously, running category cable to all different locations throughout the building is much more efficient than using AC with conduit and junction boxes, or even using DC, which requires proprietary cable. So power is the main one, but there are other areas where reduced infrastructure comes into play as well, such as basic as a local controller on the wall. Previously in standard construction, we need two keypads. We need one to control lights, we need one to control shades. And those are provided by two different vendors usually, meaning you have two different aesthetics on those keypads. We've now, with PoE, we're able to bring those together. We have one single keypad on the wall that controls shades and lights together. That also means we have less wire runs. We now only require one wire run per keypad instead of requiring two, one for shades and one for lights. The last thing that we offer for reduced infrastructure is the ability to share sensors. Sensors are becoming more and more, we're seeing more and more of them in buildings today. And every subsystem usually has their own sensors. By using PoE, we have a shared sensor. An example of this would be in a conference room. We can use an Igor occupancy sensor within that space. It can determine when that space is empty, lowering the shades, turning the lights off, making it a much more efficient space when it's not in use.
Yeah, and so like following up on some of Russell's comments about streamlining systems is kind of, and bringing those systems together, right? So Igor has our Nexus Platform, right, which is an IoT platform that allows us to bring buildings to life. So what does that mean? So the idea is that we want to take control and collect data from as many different systems as possible in a building, so that we can either provide a better experience for the occupant, or a more productive experience, or a safer or more energy savings. And so we need a means to power, control, and communicate with all kinds of edge devices. So an edge device could be a motorized shade, or an edge device could be a particulate matter sensor or a light. And so with that structure, that idea or a foundation in place, it was okay, well, Power over Ethernet is the best way to do that. And so Power over Ethernet is the best way because, one, it's reliable. It allows the real-time movement of data and information. And then it's also very secure. And then lastly, it's a globally recognized standard that's leveraging class 2 low voltage cabling. And so that's kind of how it where we got to be.
Okay. Andy, do you want to add anything? Oh, you're on mute, so you have to unmute.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, no, exactly what Matt was talking about, and as it relates then to the value of that, and when we get into the wellness and sustainability efforts of being able to actually validate and measure and monitor what's happening with the multiple systems.
Kim, you're on mute, but I assume.
What's your thought as Huey? I should know better. Oh, I'm sorry, everyone. I do this all the time.
The dollar in the jar.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, some charity would be very lucky by the end of the year. So, Alex, tell us a little bit about why your space chose POE. Maybe you could also give us a little background on what the Spark is.
Yeah, I think I'll be able to bring a little bit of different context to this conversation, be it that, from Southwire and really at Southwire and Spark specifically, we're focused on trends that affect the products we manufacture, as most companies would be. Specific to buildings, that's the wire that's used in the building and the products that are used to install them. So we've seen this trend of low voltage DC distribution really showcasing some real advantages. And they look different, obviously, to different groups, whether it's the contractors that are installing them, the owners and building managers that are managing them, having robust data and decision-making that they can drive from the data, or ultimately the occupants that are actually in this space and creating custom interactions and involvement with the space. So as part of our research as a Spark team into POE, we really wanted to touch, feel, experience a POE system firsthand, and that's why we chose to deploy a POE system in the space you see virtually behind me right now. To your comment, Kim, of sort of who Spark is, Southwire as an organization has had a long legacy of innovative products and processes. We have an intimate involvement with our customers and our suppliers, and the Spark was really formed now about 18 months ago as both a catalyst and a platform to continue to scale this innovation across our organization. We set up shop on Tech's campus, right in the middle of Tech Square in the heart of Midtown Atlanta, for a couple of reasons. One, we see it as being really a hub for innovation and future making. It amalgamates a lot of different bodies together, be it students, professorship, other innovative companies that occupy that ecosystem, startups, accelerators, and the like. It allows us to really call on some subject matter expertise as we look into some of these key trend areas for Southwire. The skeleton key of the work we do at Spark is all human-centric in nature. We've cultivated a human-centered design competency within our team, and that spans some research work like I've talked about, direct partnership with the business, curating projects, workshops, and we use those human-centered design activities to actually guide that work we do. And it brings me, again, back to the POE system in the sense of we wanted the experience to really be human-centric when you came into our space. The space you see behind me was purpose-built for this interaction. There's wheels on everything. Everything's modular because we want to be able to host a group of 4 students that are tackling a gnarly problem for our business in the terms of an internship or capstone project, all the way up to huge panel events back when we could do that in close proximity to each other and hold 50, 60 people in here and delve into new technology or trend areas that affect not only our business, but others that are around us. So hopefully that gives a little bit of context.
Yeah, let's take the time right now. I'm going to share a couple of pictures of your space. So of course, always just got to confirm that you see the full page picture here, not presenter view, right? Awesome. So this should look pretty familiar. Basically, Alex's background there. But do you want to just give us a brief overview? Let me show another image as well, so kind of have your background in here. What are some technologies in here that are POE or run off of your POE platform?
Yeah, so we work closely with Matt to delve into this space again. Started as sort of an experiment as we wanted to get our hands dirty, and we got to reap the benefits as we continue to add on to our our PoE landscape within the Spark internally. So you see that we have a variety of lighting fixtures. We wanted to make sure to look cool and hip and modern to all the youngins, the students that are coming into our space. We also wanted to use this as a way to capture data. So not only are we doing proximity sensing to understand are people in the space, let's turn the lights on and off when they see movement, but we actually wanted to go a level deeper and actually explore people counting, presence detection, space utilization, asset tracking through Bluetooth low energy sensors that are deployed throughout the space. Again, here in the conference room, you see we've installed some shading fixtures within the conference room. Again, thanks to the partnership with Somfy here. Matt, am I missing anything else in our space? Every time I go in, it's something new and different.
Yeah, like back on the human-centric effect, and I think we're going to touch on it here in a little bit about the controlling shades for the purposes of controlling natural light and how natural light contributes to happier, healthier, more productive people. Well, the same for a lot of the lighting in there that you've deployed. So you are doing a lot of tunable white lighting to such you can deliver circadian rhythm light, and then also you've got some great color changing lighting in there to indicate events or just to change the atmosphere or the mood for what you're doing. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think what I've also enjoyed, Alex, is this evolution. You kind of began with, and this is the benefit of that PoE backbone, right? You began maybe with, well, let's just look at the lighting, and then it became, well, we can. Now that we have this infrastructure, we can add sensors, and oh my gosh, Somfy has shades that work with this. We can add shading, and it continues to go, and you aren't limited. So we could come out with new partnerships, integrations, and technology that you can just keep adding on, and then it all works through the same system. So what's to say that some technology we haven't thought about would benefit by being able to automate with shading and lighting? It's hard to imagine everything that'll be possible. So I think that this backbone is a great way of getting there, to at least try and be what they call future proof, who really is. But I think this is really a good potential option.
Yeah, Kim, I know you asked me before in a different event that we had, what were some of the biggest learnings we have in the space? And I don't mean to say this as the cable producer here, encouraging everyone to just pull a bunch of extra cable that's not needed. But honestly, our biggest aha through this process was the fact that we didn't pull enough cable at first. And Matt and I have found ourselves up in the ceiling many a times, adding additional runs to accommodate additional digital signage, or in the case of COVID now, UVC fixtures, or additional tunable colored fixtures that we want to deploy throughout the space. So really that modularity, adaptability, scalability of the system becomes a key reason we went with this.
Yeah, and I think, and Alex, I don't know, you might not realize this, but you also just made a point that two people with very little technical experience are able to upgrade systems or add new functions or features without having to call in specialist third parties to do the work, right? So really now you as the occupant or the tenant or building space owner, you're in control of your own destiny to do whatever you want, whenever you want.
And just continuing the conversation about this, something we've seen in all these pictures, there's a lot of windows, and you're in Georgia, it gets hot there, so natural light's wonderful, but we also know for regulation and energy efficiency, there's a lot of reasons to incorporate shading. And I think that's a big reason why, when Matt worked with Somfy and everyone to get this integration to happen, it just made so much sense. So what I'd like to do is run a really short video. It's one of those beauty shots of like the shades going up and down to show how smooth and easy, this can be in an automated format. And then I'd like to have, while I do that, Andy and Russell, if you want to talk a little bit about just sort of the benefits of, if you were, maybe not if you were selling to Alex, but if you were trying to explain to someone why this makes sense, why you want automated shades and not dumb shades, why you want smart shading and what the benefit is, at least from that Somfy perspective, I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. So when we talk about automated shades and relative to being able to manage the natural light, that's become a much more prominent discussion with today's building designs, right? In today's market, pretty much all your major markets require the high performance glass. And so the discussion with shades, 15 years ago when we had single pane and we had all the solar heat gain coming through the windows, it's not as big of a discussion anymore because we do have the high performance glass, but we still have to manage the light. We know that sunlight is free energy, it's healthy, but we have to manage it because on a very simplistic way to look at it, we have to remember, just like in your video here, the natural light is not 100% natural coming through anymore, right? Maybe the windows have a blue tint, which affects our circadian rhythm, which will take some interaction from electric lighting. And maybe we have excess of glare from other buildings. And so because of that, because we can have affected, and it's not just letting light in, but we want to make sure that we have good views to the outside. That's a very important part of the wellness feature. And when you deploy a shade, if we have a lot of glare or a lot of light coming in or excessive light coming from outside, when you deploy those shades down, they actually can act as a polarized sunglass, enhancing your view to the outside. So that's why we'll see in a good design strategy, they may use a darker fabric. And maybe if you're overlooking a lake or something like that, and you want those views, you'll use a darker fabric because it's actually going to enhance your view. And then, of course, when we bring into the discussion of PoE and smart building technologies, that's really important because the newer technologies will let us use multiple types of data from multiple subsystems. So we're able to take that real-time data from the various sensors and actually manage that and monitor and validate what's going on once the light has come into the inside of the building.
And just to touch base on that, the goal of automated shades is to really, as Andy said, manage the natural light. We want to have those shades up as much throughout the course of the day as possible. We only want to have those shades come down if there's either a glare condition or if there's a solar heat gain condition. And you can see in Alex's office, all those shades are aligned. They're up at about 75%. And then if you look at the building directly across from it, you can see that all those shades are down. They're most likely manual shades. There are a few shades that have been opened, probably through someone went over and manually opened them, but those shades are not being managed. It's more very reactive. And if someone decided that they want to get some natural light in, they raise the shades, but most likely those shades were put down because of glare and they haven't been moved for a day or two. And that's the real value that automated shades brings is we get to keep those shades up. We get to bring that natural light into our space. But when we need the shades down, the shades will go down. But once that scenario ends, those shades will return back up, providing you that natural light and the access to views.
Right. And that can be really important, not just in the light concept, where if we look at, like, now we're coming out with Well V2. And if you look in the light concept alone, essentially every feature within that concept addresses natural light. And they combine it with daylighting, which of course is the strategic positioning of windows and light shelves. Where they talk about daylighting, daylight harvesting, dynamic solar shading, and it all revolves around natural light and being able to manage that. And even into other concepts like staircase design. This is a great example when we talk about automated shades. Staircase design, which is in the movement section of V2, we know in our buildings now, we see the staircases are centrally located to encourage people to walk up and down the stairs. That's the whole point of that, use the stairs instead of the elevators. But if you're going to try and encourage that traffic on the stairs, it has to be properly lit, right? It has to be inviting. And so if we're using both the natural light and the electric light combined to maintain that proper lighting and circadian rhythm through the CRI throughout the day, that's going to enhance and encourage that. And it's a part of the well concept. So it's not, it's not just managing the light at the window just for the sake of glare and shades. There's other strategies and impacts involved in that. But it really all starts at the window and being able to manage that natural light.
Yeah, thank you. And I think increasingly, the discussion of even before everything, health and wellness in a building was important. Now there's sort of that germ consideration, but long-term health and wellness of buildings is key, to really providing value to occupants. So we talked a little bit about shading, but I do want to open it up. Maybe get a little bit of Matt's perspective as well. And then Alex, as someone who's in a space really built on smart technology, what additional things, this POE infrastructure or other ways, what should we consider when we think about this POE technology, lighting, shading, all the other stuff, and health and wellness? Have you seen any cool examples of clients achieving this? And maybe Alex, what's it like to live or to work in a space? I assume you don't live there. Work in a space that has really put health and wellness of the occupants at the.
Yeah, I'll happily jump in here first, Kim. The real world experience of having the system and garnering benefits from the system is applicable in the work that we do in the space and the kind of events that we host. Back to my earlier comments, the space looks very different day to day, albeit a little similar these past couple months with some pretty low interaction. But previous to that, we would see different use cases within the space. If we had a small group of people, it was all about accommodating to their experience and not making it feel cavernous and underutilized, in the same way that when we overfilled the space and we brought in workshops of 20, 30, 40 people, we wanted it to feel as if they weren't stuck in a shoebox, so to speak, in the middle of Midtown. The ability to actually influence also the creativity of a group. We spoke of these color tunable fixtures within the space and ability to control the light that's coming in. Really helps us imbue a core competency of human-centered design. My TED talk on human-centered design is after this for those that want to dive into it. But in a nutshell, we'll combine divergent, explorative, ideative tasks with convergent prioritization, alignment tasks as a team, and being able to subtly influence, albeit almost puppeteer the community that's there into leaning into those tasks, being able to cool the light down and cause a physical change in an environment helps actually with the creativity, the spontaneity of the teams that we see in the space. So I know it sounds a bit manipulative here, but it really does help us get to the ultimate goal of creating better, creative, more ideative outputs in the work that we do in our space.
And I kind of think of the whole focus these days is around how do we make people fulfill, how do we make them more productive, right? So in the past, we used to always think about energy management, reduction of maintenance, and those are really a given today. And so the things that are making a difference is how do we attract that top talent and to get their maximum production. And so we're seeing a convergence of traditional technologies or traditional, like the use of fabrics, wrapping lighting in order to reduce sound or echoing in these open office environments. We're seeing better shading systems, better window systems to create a more comfortable environment. We're seeing tunable white lighting to make those folks comfortable as well. And all these different technologies coming together is all just focused on us as people. And I think we've got to continue to think about all of us here and our clients and how can we make a difference through technology, right? That's kind of what we're here to do.
I think Matt hit it right on the nose with that. When I get back into lead and well and sustainability, when we look back even 6 years and before we started seeing a lot of this newer technology, the struggle has always been, okay, it's a great idea, right? We want to be sustainable, we want to make the buildings healthier, and it's great, but everything was very standalone. I mean, you know, if you look at some of the old standards, and they even still reference manual control, and you think about that, how can that be even remotely efficient? And so what's the most exciting thing for me, why I pursued well and really started to go down that road, is because with this new technology, we can actually achieve the spirit of these standards. We talked a little bit ago about PoE and cabling and infrastructure. And, you know, traditionally, okay, it sounds great, but when we start looking at, even if we just did manual shades in a space, and maybe they just did a basic motor that you push a button, they go up and down, or they did manual. And so when a tenant comes in, right, 5 years later, we got a tenant improvement package. If we don't have that infrastructure, that cabling there in place, it can be very expensive when all of a sudden a tenant comes in and, oh yeah, we want this technology, we want to integrate to this, because we didn't build for the future like we were talking about earlier. And these new technologies makes it very easy and affordable to plan for the future. So when we're in core and shell, right, and we're thinking, okay, under core and shell, we just have single motorized shades, but we know in the tenant package coming in, they're going to want dual shades, and they're going to want to integrate to a BMS. Well, if we can plan ahead for that, right, and have an easy way that we have the infrastructure there to upgrade, that plays into sustainability efforts as well, right? Because we don't have to go through all the construction and remodels. And yeah. So the technology is I really believe is letting us actually achieve the spirit of these standards now that we haven't been able to before.
And just to add on to that, I mean, I think we're all aware that the office space is going to change considerably whenever we all end up back in our offices. And having an agile office space that can easily be adjusted, office spaces can be expanded, conference rooms can be shrunk a little bit. We can adjust fixtures, we can add fixtures, we can add shades, we can regroup the shades, regroup the lights to accommodate that modular office, is going to be something that, for those who have it, they're going to be very grateful that they have it. For those who need to make adjustments and are going to need to bring in electricians to rerun wire, or we're going to have to take walls down, and they don't have that modular office space today, it's going to be very difficult to make those adjustments. So again, looking forward and future-proofing that space, I think we're going to start running into those challenges today as more and more employees start to get back to the office space, and we need to take into account social distancing. I think it's going to become much more of a pressing issue, and people are going to start to really appreciate having an agile office. That's just my 2 cents there.
I think that's all a fantastic perspective. And I am just going to remind the audience, we will take Q&A. So please submit them. I see one's already been submitted. And I'm going to throw out one more question before we start addressing any audience questions. But really, you know, we've talking about smart buildings. We've kind of touched on that health and wellness. We all know when you walk into a space, feel good or not. And lighting is such a huge part, that management of natural lighting and all of that. For maybe an owner perspective, or even, you know, touches on sustainability a little bit, the PoE technology that connects everything together and how it's all running on the Igor platform generates a lot of data. And I think that's something I'd like to ask or throw out to the panel a little bit is this play on, you know, what do we do with all this data and why it matters? And, you know, not to be, maybe don't be afraid of data, right? But do you want to discuss, or someone have want to take the lead on really kicking off a discussion around the importance of data for achieving your goals, and why does shade data matter? Why does lighting data matter?
Yeah, Kim, I'll jump in here first. You know, we embrace data decision making on our team from as easy a space as, hey, how do we evaluate market trends and opportunities for the business? But in an effort to continue to iterate and change and adapt to our team and the services we deliver internally, we want to make sure that we're conscious of having made the right decisions and being able to retroactively evaluate some of the things that we thought to be the case at the time. And I can tell you that's one of the key benefits of our system and being able to experience it firsthand. You know, I've talked about the purpose-built space that you see behind me in the image you're sharing right now. Were best guesstimates as to the kind of work that we were going to be doing in there. We knew that it was going to be highly adaptable, so we wanted to put things on wheels, and we tried to, you know, very purposely so not set up too many stagnant barriers within the space. But as we continue to explore and invite teams in and understand how they utilize the space, we want to be able to look back and say, hey, where did we hit the nail on the head and where did we potentially miss some things? So we knew being on a college campus, for instance, the kitchen was going to be one of those hot spots. We knew that, you know, we put out free food, the students flock in quick effect. Understanding, hey, have we built a large enough kitchen? And especially as we now think of going back and trying to maintain social distancing, hey, do we need to potentially expand our kitchen's footprint? Is the conference room being properly utilized? Are we putting groups of 2 in our conference room? Or are we trying to cram groups of 15 into our conference room? Being able to take all these data points and reevaluate and adapt and change the space is going to be a key insight for us, again, because we only knew what we knew 18 months ago. Now that we're into this journey a little further, being able to take a look back and validate those assumptions we made at the time.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the data and data collection, I know some people, it makes them nervous. You know, especially if you just watch that movie, The Circle, with Emma Watson. You know, you get a little funny after watching some of these movies relating to this. But if you look at the benefits to us in our workplace, not just our homes, but our workplace, you think of in the design. You know, like Alex was talking about, you know, if we knew 18 months ago or a year ago, but we didn't. And we have all these offices that have the open floor plans, right? We have what we call free address and climate zones. And, you know, the cost of altering those is extensive, where if we have good data and we're in good communication, we have the ability for one of the office workers or employees to go to their active workstation, and they've got their badge and they can scan it, and it may not let them sit there because it hasn't been disinfected or cleaned, right? Or this zone could be locked out because it has to be cleaned, right? It has to be disinfected with the UV stuff. So, you know, there are a lot of advantages to that. Maybe you pull into the parking garage and you've got a little app, and oh, I got to take my temperature. I got to answer a few questions on my smartphone. Answer those questions. It may not let you into the parking garage, right? Your badge may be locked out and they tell you to go home. And knowing that you have these things in place, right, will allow for those in the workplace to still remain focused and productive, knowing that they are safe as best as possible. And that all just kind of ties together. This data is going to let us do that. And manage our spaces much better in a healthy way.
Yeah, Andy, to build on that, it'll be interesting in the office of the future as we think about what contact tracing looks like. I think the idea of the badges and being able to know at a very finite location where everyone's at can be a bit scary, but you think about the level of data that we have in terms of contact tracing, being able to, I mean, I would be the first to wear a badge to be able to know, hey, don't worry just because you were in a room necessarily, but hey, you were in very close proximity to someone that may have the virus. That may actually see an inclination for people to want to lean into some of these more Big Brother-esque data points.
It's important. It all plays into the mind concept, into comfort. So it's important.
Sorry, data privacy is almost could be its own day-long session. Mm-hmm. That's number one thing people think about. But you know, at least in this technology, the systems we're talking about right now, it's very anonymized. It can be, but then there's also the opportunity for personalization, and that is that balance of, you know, willing to give up just a little bit in terms of privacy for that personalized space. We're starting to get some pretty interesting questions coming in. So I'm going to start leading through what the audience is asking here. I'm just going to pop it to somebody, and then, you know, if there's another comment that you want to add on. I'm going to start with a quick one here. Andy, you're getting put on the spot by Chad. He's asking what motors are in the shade.
What motor? Oh, and what motors are in shade? Well, there's a huge range of motors available, but when we start talking about the newer technologies and PoE, we're going to typically always go. We're going to go with our RS-45 motors. Now they're available in both AC and DC power sources, but yeah, we need that bidirectional communication. So we're going to use the RS-45 motors.
Thank you. So this is a question from Charles. He's submitted a few, so we'll start with one of his. Aside from shades and lighting, are there other aspects of the room being included into the same controls? We've touched on this, but I want to throw it to Matt to really, if you want to rattle off that list or provide a little more context in terms of shades and lighting are awesome on the same control system, but what else can you do?
Yeah, awesome. Great question, Charles. So Igor supports numerous sensor types and numerous actuator types. I noticed in your question, you mentioned thermostats. And so, yes, we actually can deploy touchscreen controls that will act as a thermostat, as well as a shade control interface, as well as a lighting control interface. So rather than having multiple stations on the wall, you've now brought that all together in a single UI for the end user occupant to interact with. And so the Igor platform can either one centrally integrate with an HVAC system via BACnet, or we can also do local integrations with things like VTAX or PTAX within the room. And so it just shows that some of the other things that could live on there. Other types of devices, exhaust fans, ceiling fans, any kind of like low voltage DC, particularly things that are, we support constant current and constant voltage. So a lot of fans are constant voltage. And so if you got something within that 5 to 24 volt DC range, then that too can also be powered and controlled via power over Ethernet. So the building of the future. So if you think about the ceiling plane and what all is up there, so in the next 2 years, all your VRF air conditioning, all of your lighting, all of your shades, all of your fans, all of your exhaust fans, your refrigerators, all that'll be DC infrastructure, right? And so there'll be very little left in a building's infrastructure other than those convenience outlets and those ground fault circuit interrupters. Those will remain a while because they're written into code. But if you think about what do I plug into a convenience outlet today? Really, it might be like a vacuum. Well, it's a DC object now. Or a hair dryer, that could be a DC object one day, or a computer. Your computer's got a power supply that converts it over. So you're going to see a flip, and you're going to see Igor support all those different object types, and it's pretty exciting times.
Thank you. I've got a quick question for Alex. I know I'm asking you because I know you can answer this. Chad's wondering, where did you place the DC converter that powers the shade motor?
They're actually right above in the plenum, right above the shades right there. So we kept it local to the conference room. You can't tell from this angle. The conference room's to the left, and our centralized switch architecture is quite possibly the furthest away in the far right-hand corner of the room. So we kept those close by.
All right, so now we're going to get into a little bit more of an open question for the panel. What does one have to consider? This is from Patrick. So what does one have to consider to deploy PoE lights, but let's just say PoE technology generally in apartments? So let's just talk about, we've really focused on this office example, but are there any additional considerations when deploying PoE technology for the apartment sector?
I'll take a run at it. So if you're interested in doing something for multi-dwelling unit housing, so the first thing you've got to undertake is to work with your architect and your engineer to identify that you're going to do a DC infrastructure or an AC infrastructure, because somehow we've got to get power to these PoE switches. And once that decision is made and you say, okay, well, now where do I want my switches to live? Do I want them to live in each unit? Do I want to live outside the units? Do I want them to live centralized? That's kind of the next option. And then once you have your switch locations identified, then you go on to your nodes, and that's the same other kind of decision. Do I want to live in a closet? Do I want to live in a mechanical room, above the ceiling, in the hallway, in the space? And then those then connect to all those objects within the room. So you design like your lighting, your fans, even your motorized shade, just like you traditionally would first. And then that then drives your node selection, which then drives your switch selection, which then drives it all back through the process. So the key though is getting your engineer, your architect, your contractors, and your design team all on the same page early on, and then make sure that there's a great coordination for your project, and then putting together kind of responsibility matrices. So who's going to fill what role and draw which parts to ensure that this is done correctly.
Russell, do you have anything to add about maybe even just tips for when you're considering supporting a POE project in the apartment building?
Sure. And Matt kind of hit on it, which is make sure that everyone you're working with is on the same page. A lot of times when it comes to POE, there's a lot of direct contact with the client. Shades fall kind of under a contractor route, and we want to make sure that if the owner of the building is moving forward with POE, that information has been passed down the line. So that way the contractors that are bidding and working on such items like shading, they understand that it's POE shades, they understand that the infrastructure is going to be in place, and they understand what they need to bid forward. Because we all know that change orders add cost, they add time, they delay processes, and all of a sudden when we start requesting more and more change orders, there's a much higher chance that item is going to get VE'd out due to cost. So we want to make sure that all the information is laid out as early in the process as possible. If POE is potentially going to be going into that apartment or office or any type of building structure, that information is relayed through the entire channel. All the decision makers, all the stakeholders understand that POE is in play, and that will allow more of those contractors and subcontractors to bid appropriately.
So for we've got quite a few questions and about 13 minutes left. So we're going to see if we can at least provide a little context for as many of these as possible. And again, to the audience, upvote any that you really feel you might have too, or an and we'll try and prioritize that. But I want to throw one to Alex. They're just wondering, you've mentioned people counting. Can you describe how people counting was used in your space?
Yeah, so Matt obviously can provide some additional context as well, as he brought the vendor into our space that we used. We really look for two different types of data from that system. The first of which is using Bluetooth low energy essentially to permeate the space and understand how many quote unquote bags of water are there. This is, again, just simply trying to give a rough estimate of the number of people in the space, the way they interact with the space, and how they flow throughout the space. Again, completely anonymized, as there's no distinguishing one bag of water from the other in our space. Secondarily, we do have some asset tracking tags that we use in our space as well. You can see in this image actually of the whiteboard carts. They were designed, one, obviously for use as we think about how we draw, interact, sketch out what we're creating. But secondarily, you can obviously pair some of these together, as you see in the back of the image, and sort of box off project spaces, or allow for a bit of division without obviously hard walls being there. So we've applied some asset tracking tags to those carts to understand how people are subdividing the space in real time, and being able to get a little bit more precise data on those devices themselves.
Yeah, so the Bluetooth enabled Alex to do two things. So Avani's services are, one is a real-time location services, and the other one is their network presence sensing. And what's cool is we take a single sensor and it can deliver multiple value points and multiple kinds of information that Alex and Southwire are able to leverage.
Thank you. All right, I think this is a clarification question from Jose. He's asking, does the interaction between lights and shades require custom programming, or is there some kind of unified interface?
Yeah, there is the Igor platform acts as your your management tool of your IoT devices, but then two, your day-to-day interaction with the system. So from that single system, it will allow you to control lighting, control shades, use push button wall stations, create automated events, create what we call our action sets, which is similar to like if you're a theatrical person, a show or an event type scenario where those things can be programmed to interact with each other.
All right, thank you. We do have a question here from Karthik. He's wondering if there's case studies or references that could be used to show the cost advantages of using PoE versus traditional powering solutions, AC/DC. And so I do want to, that's kind of a yes or no. We can look at what we can dig up, but I want to pose the question, what are some areas that people are surprised that there's cost savings versus traditional installation? Anyone here can open up.
Yeah, I'll go first. So K through 12 schools, it's a lot of times that market is thought of as a very value-driven market where it's about delivering the required number of lumens at the lowest total installed cost. And what we found is that with new codes and regulations like ASHRAE and IECC, in order to deliver those codes there's an additional functionality that's required within the system. That additional functionality plus school-specific requirements has allowed us to show that in many times that PoE is cost-effective and is within budget for your K through 12 schools. So we're doing a number of schools across the country right now, just based on that. And so if you're curious about K through 12, give us a call and we can set you up with some of our other clients so they can speak to you directly about their experiences.
Yeah, obviously in our space, we have LED fixtures that are being driven by PoE. So just from an energy consumption perspective, obviously significantly less than a traditional AC fixture would be in our space. And we touched on sustainability previously. I don't mean to deviate from the cost savings applicability here, but for us, it was a cost conscious decision as well as a sustainability conscious decision in what we were doing. Southwire has a long history of making sustainable choices from the paper we purchased to the systems that we fit out in terms of lighting. So being able to capitalize on a low energy use system, leverage automation to make sure that when the space is unoccupied, the fixtures remain off, the shades come down. Not only does it help drive that cost savings for total cost of ownership, but it also makes us a sustainable conscious decision.
One of the areas we see it in is actually the integration space. Again, a lot of standard construction is going with a standalone lighting system with a standalone shading system. And a lot of times integration of those two systems is an afterthought. It could be a day two event where the client says, listen, we need some type of integration between these two systems. And then usually a third-party integrator has to come in. They may have to create some drivers to make sure that everything is compatible. There's a lot of time spent trying to figure out how to integrate lighting control system A with shade control system B. And with PoE, that's kind of discussed from day one that, hey, these two systems do work together. We all sit on one network. We share the data. The events that are created are joint events between shades and lights. They work together. We have one shared keypad that controls your shades and lights. So all those integration questions and time spent has already been included in that PoE network that we're proposing from day one.
Thank you. And just a note to the speakers, we are getting a couple of sort of technical spec questions. So I think I'm going to run through those super quickly, and then we're going to do our final wrap up here. There are still questions here. Thank you for the engagement. We're going to see what we can get through here in the last couple of minutes. Just want to throw out clarification, Matt, we use the Rev6 nodes utilizing the RS-45 correct communicate?
Yeah, we Igor in coordination with Somfy offer 3 ways of integrating the control of Somfy's motorized shades with Igor. The first one is Igor's written a plugin or a piece of software that allows Igor's software platform to go out and find the IP addresses of the Somfy gateways. And so once those IP addresses and gateways are found, those objects are then set up in the platform. And so then we are controlling those over via IP over Power over Ethernet. That's number one. Number two is the Rev 6 does have the capability of powering and controlling motorized shades from Somfy, as does the new revision 7 constant voltage node. And if you're not familiar with it, go to our support page and you can see a lot more information there.
Thank you. What's the maximum amperage rating for PoE, and can it drive Somfy's large 24-volt RS485 motors?
I don't know the draw of all the Somfy motors. I know every project that we've considered thus far, we've not run into that problem, but I don't know the technical part of that answer.
The larger motors come in at about 41 watts, and the smaller motors are under 30 watts. So it really depends on application, and again, working with a shade partner who will be able to do a shade takeoff, understand whether you need to use a larger motor or a smaller motor, depending on many different things. That will dictate what motor you need, which will then correspond with the amount of wattage required.
All right. So I'm going to end this with one big final question. We're all taking this webinar from home. Basically, everyone listening is listening probably from a home office, something like that. Why do buildings matter? Why do we care about going back to the office? Well, essentially, the title of this webinar, right? Creating compelling space, compelling about an office after this experience. Maybe think about a 30-second sort of answer to that. I know we could all probably do a whole nother webinar on that question alone. But yeah, why do buildings matter? What makes it compelling to return to the office? Why do we care?
I think that personally, I think they're gonna remain a very important venue for positive corroboration and social interaction, right? And so that, you know, that's going to produce innovation and inspiration, right? If we're not coming together as a group, and it's hard to have that. And so, but I also think it's very important to understand that even though we have to go back to the offices, and we also have to understand that today's workforce, the millennials and even the younger generation, they expect a healthy and a sustainable environment. They expect the spaces to be healthy. They expect to know when I go in there. And so they're going to be relevant. And I think these new technologies are going to help us do it right.
Yeah, I like to add a personal an example as it relates to me. So I find myself needing to solve a problem, right? And rather than reach out, I'll just try to do it on my own. And I'll get it done, but it might not be the most efficient way. It might not be the best way. And so had I been in a work or an office environment and I had the chance to see your body language, Kim, or to hang out with you, Russell, like, you might have had a better idea than I did. And I've lost that, right? And so that's why I think we'll drive back to the office environment is that to foster more innovation and keep better ideas coming.
Yeah, to continue building on this, the notion of the office really is going to change. It's not going to be the place to work any longer. You'll make a conscious decision to want to come into the office. The office will become the place to collaborate, which really underpins the necessity for these spaces to be more modular and adaptable as we cater to different team sizes, as we cater to different both in-person and hybrid in-person and virtual interactions. The need for this customization is going to be more pertinent when we return than ever before.
And a PoE solution really allows you to evaluate that space and make sure that it's being used optimized. So you want to make sure that you're efficiently using the space that you have. And by, again, utilizing a system like this, you really have the ability to do that. You can manage that space make sure that you're using it efficiently and that all that space is being used correctly. We see a lot of these huge conference rooms in office spaces that can accommodate 30 people, and if you've ever been there, you never see 30 people in that conference room. So are you efficiently using that space, or is it just nice to have a 30-person conference room? So being able to utilize new technologies to really review and understand and evaluate your space is going to be key moving forward.
I think that's been a great summary here. There's got to be more, sorry about that. There's got to be more to the space than just shelter. You have to feel good in it. It has to allow for collaboration and creativity. And then those are reasons to not stay at home all the time. Those are reasons to come back to the office. And hopefully you can do it safely. And there are other technologies out there that can help create safe spaces in terms of specifically safety from a pandemic. But when we're thinking about long-term, it's health, it's wellness, it's sustainability. So with that, really want to thank everyone for joining today and the panel. I think it's been a fantastic discussion, and I hope everybody else listening has. There's just a couple of open questions. We'll see if we can, send an answer about those soon. Otherwise, look for a follow-up email from us that'll include some of this information. It'll also include our write-up of our case study with the Spark Studio by Southwire. So you'll get that case study as a PDF, a link to this, and these pictures. So feel free to follow up with anyone here. They've made themselves available via email. And yeah, thank you so much. I hope everybody has a safe and healthy day, and we'll all see each other again soon.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, bye everyone.
Bye.